So your student loans will be gone. Your kids will be raised, right? In theory, so it won't be
Which is
as
very expensive.
kids
Oh, they're so expensive. The college kid, she's less of a burden, but she's so expensive.
are
and
they're very expensive.
and we have one more year at that. And honestly, not joking, that will free up 20,000 a year.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. I just wanted to give a shout out for anyone who is interested in being a guest. It is completely anonymous, so we'll let you choose a fake name and we will hide identifiable information so you can come on the show and share freely. It is a full hour to an hour and a half with me, Barbara, and we'll do a deep dive on your finances, where you're doing well, where maybe you're struggling, and come up with a game plan for how to reach your financial goals. To be a guest, you just need to put a submission in either on Instagram or on our website, www.futurerichpodcast.com. And you just need to be a female. As we've said before, this podcast is produced with Amy, Alex, and myself, so an all-female team. And our goal is to help improve financial education amongst women. So that is why we interview women about their finances. So if you're listening to this and you're interested in being a guest, please put in a submission on our website, www.futurerichpodcast.com, or send us a message on Instagram. Hello, and welcome to Future Rich's podcast. Today's episode is part 2 of my conversation with Katherine. So if you didn't tune in last week, I would recommend you go back and start with part 1 of my conversation. Katherine is 48 years old, and she is a married airline pilot with a retired husband and a base income of approximately $350,000 a year. So happy listening, but as a reminder, if you didn't listen last week, that is where my conversation with Katherine began.
And I don't know if it's us mentally or if like maybe I just need to say no more. It's frustrating because I don't want to, and we want, like you said, to live the lifestyle, but we have all these other conflicting goals. And I do have longevity in my family. You know, my grandmother, my great grandmother lived to be 96. My grandmother is still alive. All my parents are still alive.
Your grandmother is still, how old is your grandmother?
96.
Yeah, you're pretty long. That's amazing.
My great grandmother lived to be 96, but my grandmother currently is 96. 94, right. Somewhere around there. We stopped counting after a while, but she's old.
Yeah.
So,
right.
And it becomes an obligation.
65. Yeah, if you're 65 and you retire, right?
Yes.
And you live to 96, which I hope you do. And I mean, and
the women in your have to plan for 100.
Yeah, right. I say this all the time. If you have longevity in your family, I can't be like, let's shoot for 95 when your grandmother is 96. That doesn't make any sense, right?
Correct. And we have my grandmother needs help, and we have my mother-in-law who is 86 and in poor health. And so I see these, and I don't know if it's me being scared and seeing this. I don't know what it is, honestly.
And so a random thought just came in my head. Did your husband cover you on the pension, or is that a single life? He took single life.
No, the pension is really, honestly, not a significant amount of money.
Uh-huh. It's
so,
not, but if it went on for 45 years, it's quite a bit of money.
That's a very valid point. Very valid. That is true. But when we pulled the trigger on that, we wanted to get the maximum amount.
The max. Okay. Yeah,
for him, with so many emails, he doesn't have longevity in his family.
Yep.
So we're really coming at this whole life and savings issue from two opposite extremes.
Right, because he doesn't have, you mentioned he does not have longevity, and people have passed away very early in his family, and then you have the opposite.
He was looking at 50. He goes, if I get over 50, I'm golden.
And that's like very young these days.
It really is. But then when you look, his father didn't make 50. His older brother didn't make 50. Significant members of his family are around 60, 65, and they have significant health issues.
Right.
So
so that's a real concern.
Correct. It really is. Because when you look at the facts, you go, oh, well, I see how you got there.
Yeah, because it is a factor. And men don't normally live quite as long as women have better
Absolutely.
longevity. Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, I think it is interesting. You're coming at it from two different perspectives, but I do think there's a way to find a better balance so that we're planning, because statistically speaking, you're younger and a female. So even without your family factor, which is very important because it's genetic, you statistically are going to outlive him by several years, just with the age difference and being a female. And then we add in the fact that the women in your family lived to be almost 100, and that was your great
Million.
grandmother, which means the technology in healthcare has gotten better over those generations, which means your grandmother could easily live to be 100,
Easily. Absolutely.
easily. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's like 4 years away.
I would not be shocked if she made another 10 years.
Yeah,
She
that's
just went for a
crazy.
checkup. She doesn't even have high blood pressure.
We need to have your grandmother on to give us like longevity tips here.
We're like, grandma's healthy. That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's amazing. So yeah,
Really
we want to plan for
we
you
should,
to be able to be secure in the fact that you could have very well have a 40-year retirement.
we really needed to have considered this before we got married. We should have analyzed this much more.
That's
We're
okay.
very happy together. This is one
You know,
thing.
opposites attract.
That
I'm
is
sure
what we are.
every once in a while we see it inverted where we have a much younger man with an older woman, but it's not as common, and so then the life expectancy there like might even out a little bit, but yeah, we don't see it quite as often. Okay, so let's talk about how we balance this out. So let's talk about like the current situation with the credit card. So you have 38,000. You're gonna get your ESPP, which will be 21. So, and then you're gonna cash flow 1 month, which is like your extra 7,000 that you have between what your expenses are and what the difference is in your take home, is what you said to me.
Okay, no, this is
Which
a credit card payoff plan.
okay.
Yes,
um,
yes. I
so that would
understand.
be 28,000 towards your credit card, which would leave 10,000 left. But then upcoming expenses, we have 7,000 for a cruise. Um,
Uh-huh.
then I had that down as now. And then in June, we have 10,000 for Iceland. And then in July, we have 5,000 for college for your child, right? Or
August, but yeah,
August.
July,
Okay.
August. Yeah,
July,
we
August.
don't know.
Okay, so then that, if we added that all up, brings us back up to 32,000 in expenses in the short term. So
Correct.
this is where we're losing, not saying we're losing, but this is where the extra we have isn't really particularly extra because it's spent in a bit in advance, not always, but it appears that sometimes in advance, the 7 you have extra for next month has already been spent, right? So
Correct.
I could see
And
how
this
you
is what
could get
happens.
behind.
Yes, this is what happens is we have all of this money and we pay everything off and we have this great plan. And then all of these bills come in all at once again. And it seems insane, but it's like we don't have either the discipline or the availability to get ahead to pre-save for this stuff.
Right, because you're like behind and we don't want to keep the credit card. You want to get in front of that, but then you might get a month or two and you get ahead, but then more often than not, you're behind on like where the expenses were and the income. The only way to get ahead
Mm-hmm.
is to make an adjustment, right? That there's like no, you have a very
Absolutely.
high, yeah, you have a very high income earning job. So sometimes I say to people, get a second job. Like that's not, you're a professional with a skill set and you make top dollar, right? Like, and you worked your way there. So my
Mm-hmm.
recommendation to you is like no second job, but I think that you and your husband really need to sit down and talk about like where are your priorities and like how do you want to be spending your money? And I think it needs to be more of a proactive approach than reactive. So I'm not saying like, don't go to Iceland, don't take the cruise, don't help with college. But I think that there will be some things that you need to say no to in order to also then work in retirement and emergency fund because those are also they should also be a priority. An emergency fund will give you a lot more bandwidth for when things pop up that are not fun things, right? Because like owning a home and having two children and having a parent stay with you means there's going to be expenses that come up that are like, as you said, like a dental bill or the truck getting fixed. Like those are not fun
Mm-hmm.
things. And if you have an emergency fund, you can take from that for those things that have popped up so they don't have to go on a credit card because something you got in a car accident or a parent needs help with something. So I think it comes down to, and I know you and your husband are not aligned, right? Because he doesn't see the value probably as much in retirement given the lack of longevity in his family. But I think it needs to be
Yeah.
a little bit more of a compromise of like, let's still spend on vacation. And let's say we're going to allocate X amount towards vacation, a certain percentage, but we also need to allocate a certain percentage towards retirement and emergency fund. And then maybe that kind of dictates because there's also nothing wrong with saying like we're going to spend a year or two and then we're really going to focus on retirement, but you're cruising in on retirement. Like you have a set stop date, which is a very unique position to be in because most people don't have a set stop date on their career.
Okay.
You know, like so for instance with financial advisors, they literally never retire. It's a huge issue. They're like 80 and they're like, I feel great. Like I'm not getting rid of my clients. Like, no joke. Like there are 80-year-old financial advisors because you literally don't have to retire. No one's going to make you retire. So
Yeah, I guess I never thought about that because it's the only career I've ever known. True,
yeah, there's like I see doctors that are 80 that are still practicing. Like if they own their own practice, like if it's a medical facility, they sometimes then mandate like a 70. Like judges have a mandatory 70 retirement, I think, for like a Supreme Court judge. But there are plenty of careers where you can just continue to work if you decide that you like the lifestyle and the income, you enjoy what you do, and you don't want to retire. Like financial advisors who are like I see people like turn up the notch on their career at like 65. They're like feeling great. You know, I think I'm going to build out the business more at 65. Um,
Okay.
so we have like a set date of where you're going to retire and the benefits will end. And so I do think it's important to say to your husband, like, let's sit down, have a meeting, and let's talk about aligning ourselves from a financial standpoint of like still enjoying our lives and enjoying the money and saying this is the amount we're going to use for vacation and fun stuff. But we also have to take a percentage of our income towards retirement. And for the listeners, I guess the one thing I didn't say is your target for everything, like total, you gave me with 8 million.
Everything combined, I would feel reasonable at that. It's again seems insane to say out loud, but when I run the numbers, that is what I need.
Yes, with longevity in your family, and if you want it to have a comparable lifestyle. Now, some of your expenses are going to go away. You're not going to be paying student loans. We will still have a mortgage, though. You will still have a mortgage at 65.
I'm never getting rid of that.
Yeah, no. We're going to keep it's basically free money at the interest rates. So your student loans will be gone, your kids will be raised, right? In theory, so it won't be as
very expensive. Oh, they're so expensive. The college kid, she's less of a burden, but she's so expensive.
Kids are they're very expensive.
And we have one more year at that. And honestly, not joking, that will free up $20,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Not exaggerating.
Okay, so that's where I'm hoping the emergency fund comes in. I know you mentioned a boat club.
Yes, something my husband's always wanted, and we have decided while the college is going on, it's not reasonable for us to do that.
Right.
But that would not going to be a celebratory thing while he is still able to enjoy it, while I still want to enjoy it, things of that nature. And it's cheaper and easier. So it has, I think that might be maybe to your point, we can run that concurrently with a goal of the emergency fund. That will be our reward type of thing.
Yes. Because I think, so here's what I would say. So if the vacation spend, which I don't have a total grasp on, but let's say vacation spend is somewhere between like 30 and 40,000 a year, give or take, you think? Is that true? No?
No.
Well, so I have 15. Well, I have 15 for 2 trips right now, but that's not including like airfare or food or anything, right?
Food. We don't pay for airfare.
Oh, right. You don't pay for airfare. Sorry. That's silly. I knew that.
I mean, sometimes we do, but only if we get a heck of a deal and we're irritated. For the most part, we do 1 trip a year during summer. We do a bunch of small trips.
Okay. Small trips.
$1,000 here, $1,000 there, weekends, type stuff like that.
Okay.
And the cruise is prepaying a cruise for next year, not even this summer. That's next summer.
Oh, okay. Next summer. Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of a 2 time.
Okay. So here's what I would do. I would say you need to figure out how much we need to be putting towards retirement, right? Because it is real. Because right now, I did
We
the
have those numbers.
numbers. Yeah.
That's what
So
we're
I
doing now. I don't know if I can contribute anymore to retirement because unless you have some insight for me, I believe I'm maxing out everything I can max aside from just a brokerage account.
nailed it. You don't have a brokerage account. So
Gotcha.
here are the
You
numbers
think I
for the target of 8 million. Here's where your numbers are gonna be if you max out, and this is just using I probably got logged out of the system while we were talking, but let's see. Okay.
okay.
So now this is using a retirement planning software. So once again, these are making assumptions on market returns. There's no guarantee. These are ballpark numbers just to give you an idea. But
Sure.
um, if you, let me just see where it tells you return. So it's
Mhm.
using a return, an average return of 7%, and that's with the continuation of approximately 70,000 a year into the 401k, maxing out your Roth and maxing out your husband's Roth.
Okay.
It would get your 401k to approximately 5 million, which is what your target is for that, which I think it would be great. It would get your Roth to 480,000, and it would get your husband's Roth to 385. So it gets us, like 800 and change in the Roth, which is tax free, which would be stretched farther, and then 5 million in your 401k. I don't think that
Oh,
is going to be enough by itself for you for the lifestyle, like to continue where you are. Like you will, as we said, have less expenses in 17 years, but you still will have a mortgage and you still will have expenses. You also are in a high
absolutely.
income bracket. And the big difference between where you are now and where you're going to be then is you're not going to be paying into Social Security at all. And you're not going to be paying into Medicare, and you're not going to be putting anything into the 401k, right? So some of the savings will go away. So that will help. The Roth is important because at 5 million in a 401k, all of that is taxable. So you're still going to be in a pretty decent ordinary income bracket. The Roth can help
Mhm.
offset that. What would also offset it though, from a retirement standpoint, would be a brokerage account, right? And having a capital gains tax bracket as well, so that you're playing all three brackets. You're doing ordinary income, tax free, which is your Roth, and then having the option for a capital gain tax situation, because that would also
Right.
be more advantageous
Those
than
would,
ordinary income.
right. Those would be long-term capital gains assumed by that point, correct? That's what
Yeah,
you're
assuming,
reflecting.
yeah, depending on the investment, you could still have some short-term tax liability, but the premise would be that you'd have more in the long term, and so that would be more tax efficient as well from a distribution standpoint. And so the benchmark rule, and I do think for the longevity in your family, using a 4% distribution to start for retirement would be appropriate, at least to plan for. You can always adjust
Okay.
that as you need, but if you were using a 4% distribution, so that means from the 401k you would be pulling around 200,000. Um,
Okay.
and then another 4%, we'll just round up with the Roth, say it's a million, so that's another 40,000, so 240,000 in gross income, 40,000 which is tax free, which is amazing. 200, that's going to be ordinary income, and then the 30,000 from your husband's pension. Now that's not including Social Security, and so I know you said your husband's Social Security, he wants to collect it as soon as possible. I actually don't see an issue with that, just because you're the higher income earner. So your Social Security, I would consider deferring to seeing, you could probably get close to 5,000 a month on Social Security at 70. You could
Okay.
just, what I say to people is you can make that decision every year. So every year you look at it and say, how are my investments doing? How am I doing? Do I want to defer? You can always change your mind and get a lump sum check of up to 6 months. But so it would be 240,000 plus your husband's 30. So 270 plus his Social Security at that point, which would be another 14,000. And then ideally you defer a little bit to get yourself closer to like somewhere between 50 and 60,000 from Social Security. So those are, I still think those are great numbers. If you had a brokerage account as well, and not to say that you need to start that now, right? Not to say that all of this has to be done today, but maybe that's something in the back of your mind that, 10 years out from retirement or 12 years out from retirement, right? You say,
Mhm.
okay, we're going to add that vehicle as well as another savings goal. Because at this point, we have the emergency fund done. We're maxing out the Roths. One kid has completely flown the nest in terms of expenses. Fingers crossed, right?
Crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Or maybe you
And
say
then
it's like,
then
did
we
the
have
next one go?
the
Little
correct.
one, right, in 10 years.
Yes.
So maybe the brokerage account is something you just fund in between college. When you have one done, we're waiting for the next one. You take a break during those 4 years where you have one in college, and then you pick it up. The thing with the brokerage account is you can do it as you want to, as needed. There is no, right, there's no retirement rules around it. There's no limits on
Mhm.
contributions. I don't want to say there's no rules, but it's just an investment account. So it's completely up to your discretion.
How much are you looking for in the brokerage? Are you looking for the missing 2 million?
So I ran the numbers on that. And if
Mhm.
you wanted to get to a brokerage account that had an approximate value of over $1 million and you started it now, the funding on that would be, this is a lot. I don't, I'm scared to tell you this. It would be,
I will deep breath.
okay. It would be 3,000 a month and it would work out to be around 1.2 million in retirement. At a 7%. I'm using a 7%, which I think is a conservative number.
Hmm.
And so using 7% with maxing out the Roth, the 10,000 into the 401k, and then 3,000 into a brokerage account, your total would come to in investments like 7.1 million.
I was thinking that the property would be an additional two plus.
Your primary.
Correct. Are you
And
considering that as a non-factor because we still need
mhm.
someplace to live?
Yeah, I am
Yes.
considering it as a non-factor, unless the plan is to downsize, take that money out of the property and say we're going to sell it and net 1 million and buy something for 500. And then we could say we have 500 in a brokerage account that gets you to half that number, right?
That is probably, that's kind of in the back of my mind what I have been thinking. But to be fair, we're not going to want to go into a 500,000. We're going to want to go, I'm assuming 20 years from now.
I
I
took I
mean,
took an educated guess without having ever met you or talked to you and just took it out as a factor because what I will say what I see with people is some people do downsize oftentimes because of the cost of home prices have changed so dramatically if you think about it over the
so true.
years.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I'm looking at a car that was the entire cost of my parents' home. My grandfather bought his first home for $30,000, which is like crazy. And then my dad bought the house I grew up in for 85,000. Like that's what some cars go for. You can't buy a house, you
You're
just buy a
absolutely correct.
car. Right. So I didn't factor that in to be conservative because what I've seen recently with retirement planning is when people are selling the house that they bought, then they're going and buying, let's say, in another state. They're ending up by the time they spend moving expenses, all new furniture, because like what fit in one house maybe doesn't fit, especially if you're going to like a different climate or something. They're almost neutral. Very rare. Every once in a while we get like 100,000 from it or 200,000, but I haven't
That's
seen
it.
anyone get 500 out is what I have. I just haven't seen it. Not to say it can't happen, but from a planning
Percent.
standpoint, I think it's better to be conservative. No one has ever walked in my office and been like, shoot, you know what? I have way too much money for retirement. Never happened. It just hasn't, people, usually the problem is like, do we have enough for retirement? It's never been, I think we have too much saved for, I just haven't seen it.
I honestly bounce between the two because, like you said, from our perspectives of not growing up super wealthy and then not knowing how much we want to, I want to plan for the future. My significant other, maybe not so much. I could see easily in his perspective thinking we're super overfunding everything. And
Yeah. But the
I
difference
suppose it
here
comes back,
is but you're funding it all.
you know,
You're funding it all.
I know.
So
Yeah.
so like the thing is like with his income, like what
Hmm.
he'll bring in, which there's nothing wrong with income disparity. It's perfectly common in all households.
Sure.
We have a huge income disparity, my husband and I. But if God forbid something happened to you, his lifestyle would be
Hmm.
dramatically different.
Dramatically. Hmm.
Dramatically. I mean, he couldn't afford the house.
Well, we life insured for that.
Yeah, so you have life insurance on you,
Yeah, of two
so
million.
that 2 million, perfect. And when does that end?
Well, it is term. Um,
Which is
uh,
great.
We just actually 6 months ago, now that you're mentioning it, we just did a separate policy on me for one. So I'm up to 3.
Perfect. That's
because,
great.
yeah, we had the term, which we got a decade ago, I want to say,
Okay.
maybe more. I think we have 8 years left on the 2.
Okay. On the 2. Okay.
And it will get the little one up to late teenage years, which was our goal.
Perfect.
Keep them in the house throughout their childhood was our general
Plan.
goal. So we have 2 on that. And then we just, like I said, it might have been 10 months ago, but fairly recently, within the last year, we just got an additional $1 million to help overlap that, to give me another 10 years where, let's say, poof, I'm done tomorrow. He has another million to get, the younger one from, like, in theory, 16 years old to mid-20s.
Yeah.
Through
20s.
her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is important because God forbid something happened to you and you didn't have insurance. He does have the 401k, but it's not enough, not to educate another child, not to maintain the current lifestyle.
It would probably be enough to take care of him. If he was conservative, didn't live this lifestyle.
If he was conservative, yeah, because he then at 30,000 in income, he's losing the primary breadwinner.
And we recognize that.
Yeah, so you took
risk.
Yeah, that's really a big risk. You took care of that. But what I would say, if you think about it, you have 3 million of life insurance. Your first target should get to 3 million of net worth, right? Mm-hmm. Replace your value that you've insured so that there's 3 million in assets after the debts are paid.
Right, and we're not there.
Not there yet. So that would be like my counter argument with your husband, right? Is we know we need $3 million to be comfortable. Like if God forbid something happened to me, we're not there yet. So let's work towards that number. And so rather than saying, I think the disconnect would maybe say 8 million coming from humble beginnings seems like a crazy number, I'm sure, if you say 8 million. Right. But if you say, we know we need 3 for you to be okay from a retirement standpoint and for our child not to have experience a financial tragedy where we lose the house and lose your mother, right? That's very traumatic. Right. We know 3 million is the number. Let's get our net worth to 3 million after our debt, right? That we've replaced that risk with our own money because the insurance at some point is going to go away.
Yes, that is the plan.
So that's where I would start. I would start with let's sit down and see how we can self-insure and replace the goal is that when the insurance runs out is that you've done that yourself, so that you have 3 million ready to go.
Yes.
So I think the important thing with this is to take baby steps. And not to say that we don't target 8, but what I do honestly believe is with a really good Social Security, and if you got a really good emergency fund and we get better control on the cash flow, like we have a little more, we prioritize your future selves, right? Like you prioritize 65-year-old Katherine and your 70-year-old future husband, right? And then make sure they're comfortable and that they're happy too. I think it's a balance of making sure you're happy today and enjoying today's moment, but you're also providing for the older, elderly version of yourself and that you have the capability of providing for yourself in the future as well. It's, you have to do both. And I think starting with, let's try to get to 3 million and replace what we've purchased in insurance because we've determined that's the number we need.
I really like that because, like you said, I think it's just a mind game because where we come from, and we still have friends that we love and we help out and everything, and we see we're there at sometimes, and then we see what we're looking at, and it's just we can't bridge that gap.
Mm-hmm. But
we know that's a logical number.
Yeah,
we've gotten to that number logically, and then when you look at it in the minutia, you're like, I can't. So, like I said, you can't bridge that gap.
Yeah, I think the issue that you're having with retirement is the number is so large and just so foreign to say, like, your husband is like, we don't need $8 million. Like, that's crazy.
That's
probably,
exactly what we're looking at. We're like, this is insane. This is crazy. This is literally crazy land. We have a truck that's 250,000 miles because we're like, well, we certainly don't need a new car. It's an expense we don't need. And that is completely true. And then you look at it and you're like, 8 million.
Right. So it's a disparity in thinking, right? Like
Completely.
I've, and so it's hard to sacrifice today for a future that feels esoteric, right? Like it feels like nobody would need $8 million. So why would we not go to the boat club to get to this crazy number, right? Like like when you come from
Absolutely.
humble beginnings, it's very hard to wrap your mind
It
around that
is.
number.
Logically, I understand that number. I arrived at that number. I ran the numbers on that number. It's a completely illogical number, and that is absolutely what we would need. And then you have the shortened lifestyle, and like you said, it's just so out there. And then you go, our kid is in college one more year,
Right.
and our little one's never going to be this age again.
Right.
And you start running those moments. And you go, I don't understand. Why can't we afford $5,000 on this? You know, it's. But I
And so,
think that's a big help. Is
mhm.
not looking at the. I got to get something in between. I got to get
Yeah,
that stepping stone.
you were basically saying like to your husband, okay, so we're gonna run a marathon today. And he's like, I have bad knees and I don't run. And you're like, that's okay. We're just gonna power through the marathon. And he's like, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's
So
exactly what it is.
let's start by taking a walk. Like let's walk
Yes.
first. So the first thing is you have great 401k match, which is going to get you to 5 million with a decent return in the market. Like we just need an average of 7%, which over a 17-year period, 20-year period, we won't pull maybe the day you retire, but like we should be, hopefully we can do that, right? We don't know, but hopefully. So if you just leave that alone and we keep getting it, that gets you to 5 million. If you can max out your Roth every year consistently, that will be the key. That will get you around a million, give or take, 800 million, but it goes very far. Those dollars go very, very far because they're tax free. So then that plus his pension, plus his social security, assuming you don't collect, would get you to approximately 285,000 in income in retirement starting at 65. Then let's say you defer your social security, and let's just say your social security comes in at 50,000 a year, right? And we spend a little bit more from 65 until we get you to like 68, 69, and that comes in around 50,000 because you're completely maxing that out and should continue to do so for 17 years. So you should have the max benefit available. So then with another 50,000, that's going to get you closer to 340,000 in income, give or take, depending on where your social security comes in.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice number in retirement. Is it 400? No, but we don't have student loans. We're not saving in a 401k any longer. We're not contributing to the Roth any longer. And some of this will be a little bit more tax efficient with the Roth.
Yeah,
I do not all, but
needing all of that money.
Right. So I think we're okay there. You will still have the same house. We're not going to use the equity in the house because it's a non-performing asset, and most likely you're going to need somewhere to live and you're going to want somewhere nice to live. So we'll just leave that alone. If God forbid there was an emergency, you could downsize, but we're not. It's always better not to plan for that. You need to live somewhere, and living in a home, as you know, as a homeowner, is expensive. The house needs things. Yeah,
and we live in a nice area. We do, and so as soon as they see our area, they add 10%.
When they give you quotes, they're like, yeah, when the plumber comes, or like, yeah, I know.
It's so expensive. It's like, even if you see like these houses, like you go, we could, like, if I won the lottery, I would buy that $10 million house. No, you wouldn't, because it costs $5,000 like per month to run that thing. It's
what about in the South? You have landscaping. What does landscaping cost a month on a $10 million house?
Our yard is so terrible, because we are like, that is in the category of things we're not doing till the kid graduates. Okay, we're not doing landscaping. We're not getting a new car. We're not getting a boat club. There is it feels like there's so much that and like I said, we look back and it's like, this is crazy.
Well, so things are expensive. So I don't count the house because it's a non-performing asset and it takes money to keep it up. Property insurance maintenance is expensive on a house. And as you said, if I knew what?
Our property tax bill? Last year was,
I can guess. 20?
Oh, what is it?
20,000?
No. Oh, God, it's not that much, thank God.
Well, I'm from New York.
Just over 13.
Just under 13. Yeah, I'm from New York. Property taxes are more than your mortgage in New York.
You're right. You beat me. You are correct.
Yeah. I mean,
New York.
I don't want to beat you. When I came to buy my house here in Utah, the real estate agent told me the taxes and I was like, oh, okay, monthly. And he was like, monthly. And I was like,
I have friends that are like that. We paid my mother-in-law's zero ability to save anything. And every year was a panic because her property taxes were due every single year. And we were like,
as they are. Every year they are due. Yeah.
every year. And we were, because she didn't have a mortgage, because again, she was a million years old. So we were like, well, of course, we're going to help you out. How much is it? Okay, let's get ready. It was $1,200 for the whole year.
Can't even imagine that.
That was like, and again, like I was saying, one of the great things about our income is that if and when somebody does go, I have this emergency, what's it going to take to dig you out of this crazy hole that you dug yourself in? They're like, oh man, I really need like $2,000.
And you can swing it.
Yeah, we can swing that. And it's a wonderful gift to be able to give those that we love.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, yeah.
And you can still continue to do all that. But I think what you need to do is you need to walk before you run with your husband, because it's a team effort and you both want to be on the same page about what you're saving. And so I would start with how do we get to the number of what we've insured ourselves for? Because he is aware that if he lost you, he needs $3 million. So he is in agreement on that number. So let's strive for that number.
I got him to agree to that number.
Oh, you got him to agree to that. Okay.
Yeah. Because I run the numbers and I go, what about this? What about that? What about that? And, I don't know. I'll figure it out. But I know that that's what he needs.
Right. So let's start with there. Let's work towards replacing that. Right, and the way to do that is continue to be in the 401k and to max out the Roth. I do think that I don't think you need 8 million, because I do think I think 285,000, roughly 300,000 is where was where you'd be comfortable. The issue with retirement planning is we don't just come up with this number today and then never look at it again until you come to age 65. You revisit this number on a regular basis to see, is this correct as we're getting closer, and you refine that number. But if we look at it today with today's information, where you're going to be in the future, I do think between 285 and 350 is probably where you would be comfortable, given that we'll get rid of some expenses. And I would strive for that number and then just refine this on a regular basis. But I do think it's important. I think it's too much to start with everything. So let's not do a brokerage account now. Let's focus on putting some money in an emergency fund and maxing out the Roth. And the way I would do that is I would set it up automatically. I would set up those saving goals as the bill that you pay on the first of the month, like you do everything else.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Can I ask you one more question about the emergency fund?
Sure.
What number would you like to see is in the emergency fund to make you feel happy? Is that just the standard 3 to 6 months?
I would like at least start with 3 months, which would be 60,000.
I was gonna say that's a lot of money.
I know. But if you think about it from the perspective of you have really good cash flow.
Yeah.
Right. And so if the ESP money wasn't going towards the credit card, you could do that. You could get almost 40,000 pretty quickly, especially with some monthly money.
That is very true.
Here's the way I would kickstart it. If I were in your shoes, the way I would kickstart it would be let's spend 3 months and really monitor our saving and just take everything extra. We're going to be really diligent about saving for 3 months or 90 days, like a 90-day sprint. We're just going to really see what we're spending. We're going to say no to things for 3 months only, not forever, for 90 days. And you could pick a period of time. I wouldn't maybe do it over the summer, but maybe over the winter, December, January, February. It's not, not going boating, not the best time to go away. Obviously you have holidays, but I would pick a time and just say, we're going to save as much as we can and see what progress we can make. Because once you do that and you get 20,000 or 25,000 in an emergency fund, you kickstarted everything. Right. And then you're actually, we didn't realize we were spending so much on dinner out. We could totally just get rid of one dinner out, because we do it because it's convenient and we're tired at the end of the day and we don't feel like cooking, but we would much rather have those monies for something else. Right.
Yeah. No,
So,
we did that when we bought the house.
oh, you did?
We did. That was many years ago, and I hadn't upgraded to captain yet, and so I made less than half of what I'm
Oh,
making now. Yeah, and that was just several years ago, 6, 7 years ago. I want to say no, 5 years ago, and we
okay.
bought the house 6, 7 years ago.
Okay.
So we were able to do that because we had a goal and we were focused on the goal.
Yep.
And so that's what we did. And I want to say we saved again on less than half of the income I'm making now. I want to say I made 150,000 and we saved like 20,000 in like 4 months.
Right. I mean, you're perfectly capable. Like you could definitely do it. It would, but you have to be aligned. You have to say like for
That's
90
it.
days or whatever the time frame is, we're just going to focus on getting the credit card done and the emergency fund halfway funded. And then we're going to go back. And then it's a really nice reset. I did it recently in August. I just like monitored everything and I found a bunch of like, I actually found a bunch of erroneous charges. Like I got double billed for something. I called the company. I was like, why
Mhm.
was I billed for this? They're like, oh, well, you're an apartment complex. I was like, no, I'm not. I'm not an apartment complex. And they were like, oh, we're sorry. We'll refund it. Like I normally do my
Yeah.
accounting like a month later, like where at that point it would have been harder. I would have, I caught it right away because I was really monitoring everything for the month. Because that's also, right, like in the beginning when I started saving and all of that, I had to be super diligent. And then as you make more money, you don't have to be super diligent. It doesn't really matter if something comes in at 500 versus 100 because I hate to say it, but you don't notice because the money's
It's
there.
when I was broke, I monitored every penny.
Yeah.
And I
Oh,
was
I
broke for
know.
well over like a dozen years. I get it.
Yeah. So if I were in your shoes, not everyone does it the same way. Some people would say, I'd rather do it incrementally over years. I'd rather say, we're going to do the Roth. I'm going to set up $500 a month or $1,000 a month towards my emergency fund, and I'll just let it grow over time. And I don't want to have to monitor anything. I took a guess
Mhm.
because you said you're from beginnings that at some point in your life, you had to be very disciplined and monitor what you were making. So you're
Mhm.
capable of it. So it's up to you how you want to do it. Like you could do it slow and steady, or you could say, we're going to do 90 days and we're just going to be done and we're going to set ourselves on a different course after 90 days.
I really like that idea because psychologically, I think it would work better with my spouse. He doesn't. He gets frustrated if I go, look, over the next 2 years, we're going. He's like, oh
Right.
my god, are you kidding? But if
That's
it's
how
90 days, yeah,
we
he's
can
an
get on
athlete.
board.
He understands intensity. Yes, he could do that.
That's how I feel about things. I'm the type of person that I'd rather know it's like short and sweet. And like for 90 days, I'm going to say no to things. We're going to cook meals at home. I'm going to really monitor my spending and I'm really going to hit my savings goals. And then after that, not that I go exactly back to where I was because it reminds you, of like, wow, we could really save a ton of money this way. But then you go back to like, yeah, we're going to go out to eat. I'll DoorDash it. That's fine because I got the credit card done. We got 25,000 in emergency
Yeah,
fund. The Roths are on target, and all it took was 90 days, and we kind of reset our financial life.
I like that a lot.
I would give that a roll because I really do think after 90 days of like being very diligent and intentional with your spending, you'll get the credit card taken care of. You'll be on your way. Maybe you'll have a month and a half of emergency fund, and you get the automation on the Roths. And then it'll be easier going forward because you had a good reset.
Yeah, that's very true. That is very true. Okay, I like that.
Does that sound good?
Yes, I'm just looking over the action steps, and the new information is the brokerage.
Okay, and so that is in, remember, tell people sometimes keep something in your back pocket. Your priority is maxing out the Roth and the emergency fund. Once the emergency fund is done, then
Yes.
you could say, if we have extra money, maybe we'll throw it in a brokerage account. It's in your back pocket. You don't have to do it. I don't think you necessarily need it, but it would be helpful, I think, in your retirement if you, besides having an emergency fund, if you also had a brokerage account.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't. Maybe that is the last 5 years of planning for retirement after your last child's out of college. But it's good to be
Mm-hmm.
aware of it, right? I think the
Absolutely.
awareness of it is the most important. I think the immediate priorities are I would try to reset the budget and come down on the numbers with your husband. I just think the numbers are too hard to conceptualize. So it's hard to be excited about working towards a goal that feels so foreign. And so I would
Mm-hmm.
just focus on targeting the 3 months in the emergency fund, eventually work up to 6, and then maxing out those Roths. And then I think you'll be fine. But I do think the 90-day would help reset the budget and give you a better idea of where is the money going. Because as a busy professional with two children and making good money, there are leaks in your budget. Like there are things you're probably spending money on that you're not aware of, or the prices are different than what you think. Like
Yeah.
to give you perspective, my income has gone up over the years as well. My husband, his income has stayed very consistent or I don't want to say low, but he's not in a high earning profession because not everyone is in those professions. My husband can tell you the price of everything at the different grocery stores. He knows what Parmesan cost at this grocery store versus that grocery store because that makes a difference if it's $2 more on his budget. And when you get to a certain point, you don't always look at the $2 difference and then you multiply that by the hundreds of things you're buying throughout the month. And it can you could find $1,000, $2,000, which is your Roth contribution just on things you didn't even know that were happening.
That is very true. My husband's a gas price expert.
Yeah.
So I understand.
Yeah, so he would be very
Okay.
good at this. I would engage him and say, "You're really good at this. You notice the prices on things more than I do, maybe, and let's do this as a team. And I think this will allow us to more comfortably spend on the things you want, like the boat club, if we can tick off these things, because then we know that we're both taken care of and we're replacing this insurance that at some point is going to go away, which makes me nervous."
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm definitely going to want to have you back on to see how this goes.
Oof. Accountability. Yes. I would love to. I would think because we have our summer pretty much set, and August we have the tuition bill, but we conveniently have September, October, November.
Perfect. It's a perfect time to do it.
That might work out really well, actually. So I'm going on record.
Okay, I have my fingers crossed for you. I know you can do it.
I can do it. No, we can do it.
If your husband's a former athlete, they are super. My husband's a former athlete. They're super disciplined. Super disciplined.
He's super intense. He goes, okay, we have a problem. What can we do? Because if I go to him and I go, hey, babe, we're doing great. We got a little extra spending money, the expenses came in a little bit less. We have $1,000 extra this month. All of our savings goals, everything is great. He goes, great. And we go on a vacation, and then he does something to his truck, and then we did this, and I tell him the ands kill us. You can't do this and that and this, and we can't do the ands. And I go, oh, babe, now we're under, so we got to just pull it back, stay within our normal budget, and he does nothing.
Well, it's not that you can't do it all, but you want to do it. You have a lot, right? We have kids in college and an elderly parent, so it's we can't do it all every month. Maybe this month we can do this, and next month we can do that, right?
Right.
And then,
but I think the 90-day sprint would be using his strength or his weakness, however you want to term that, against him in a way. Because you're you love intensity. Let's do intense.
do it intense. Yeah, exactly.
Use that intensity. Because he, like you said, the athlete mentality. He knows how to drop weight. He knows how to work out for a goal, or there's a big game. Or I got to build muscle fats. He understands all of that.
Yeah, and those are usually shorter term. You're not saying okay, we're going to get ready for a game in 4 years. Well, let's start training today. Right. Yeah.
Right. If I see 2 years, I lost him. But if I could give him that 3 months, I think we could work with the 3 months.
All right, well, give that a whirl. I will keep my fingers crossed for you. It was so lovely to have you on. This was super interesting with all the different aspects of this. So this was wonderful.
Thank you for helping me out with all of my craziness. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. For all of our lovely listeners, you can follow along. Our most updated information is on Instagram. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can submit a request at www.futurerichpodcast.com. Time for our disclaimer. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance references are historical and do not guarantee future results. Make sure that you consult with your own legal, tax, and/or financial advisor before making any decisions.